All right. Thank you, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the second to the last Carbon Inventory Project office hours. I noticed that there are over 100 folks who've accessed the YouTube versions of the last 5 months worth of training, information about what the Carbon Inventory Project is, how to use Energy Star Portfolio Manager, and how to put in interesting things like delivered fuel and generated energy. Today, we'll be talking about actually using the process of submitting your information. And I'm going to turn it over to Danielle to to start us off. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you all for being here today. As Sarah said, I'm Danielle Sikowski. I'm the Program Manager at Environment and Culture Partners, and we're joined here by Misha Egal from New Buildings Institute, who will also be presenting with us today. I'm going to give you just a little roadmap of what we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to give you an overview of the form for submitting your Carbon Day totals, as well as how to locate those values in Energy Star Portfolio Manager. And if you don't use Energy Star and use another method to measure energy use, Misha will be sharing her spectacular tool so that you can participate too. She will also be giving us a project update on establishing an Energy Star score for museums. So the Carbon Day form is just about ready. We are in the testing phase and are working to have that available by next week. And if you're signed up for SIP, you'll receive an email with that form, but it will also be available on the Carbon Inventory Project site page. So questions are pretty straightforward, like your email, name, in case we have questions about your data, and of course to share the results with you. But there's just a few things I'd like to touch base on. One of those is anonymity. So as a reminder, your organization's name will not be attributed to your individual total. The number we share on June 16 will be an aggregate number for the sector. You will have the option to remain anonymous, but you can give us permission to share your organization's name as being part of the total Carbon Day number. I also want to point out there will be a checkbox saying that the data you're going to submit will include all fuel types for the dates January 1, 2022 to December 31st, 2022, so that we're capturing that calendar year. But as a note for non-Energy Star users, these dates might vary slightly just depending on your billing cycle. For instance, this might be January 8, 2022 to January 8, 2023. So that little variance is okay in those cases. And just so you're aware, there are 3 values that you're going to input on this form. One of those is the gross floor area or square footage of your institution. The next is the total greenhouse gas emissions in metric tons. And the third is the total greenhouse gas emissions intensity. So this final number divides emissions by the floor area of the building, and this is helpful when we're comparing buildings because it normalizes consumption by building size. Now that's Misha's language. Thank you, Misha, for that lovely definition. And then finally, if your organization has more than one property or meter that you monitor, there are 2 ways to approach this form. You can submit the form for each property or meter that you monitor, so multiple times, or you can provide a sum of the greenhouse gas totals and square footage of all properties and submit this form one time. The one caveat to that, organizations with properties in multiple geographic locations should only be summing properties that are in the same geographic region. This is because the electric grid is different in different regions, and that impacts the emissions values. So now I'm going to tell you how to find your Carbon Day totals in Energy Star. And these instructions will be linked on the form as well. But I'm also going to do a really quick demo just so you can see it in action. So once you're logged in, on your screen, you're going to see a few different tabs. One of those is reporting, as you can see circled in red. And then the next part of that is just you're going to click the progress and goals report right by that red arrow. That's going to navigate you to the Generate and Downloads Reports page. So just a few things to note here. You'll want to make sure that the Progress and Goals report is selected. That's A. B, you're going to select the property that you're going to be counting for Carbon Day. And this report can only capture data for one property at a time. So as a reminder, if you're doing multiple properties, you'll be generating this report a few times. So then in C, you're going to select the specific phrase single year ending December 31, 2022, and then you'll click Generate and Download Reports. So when you're downloading a report, just a couple things to note about that. If you're having difficulty viewing it, your browser might be trying to block the download. It might look like the icon that's circled in red here. And in which case, you can either just click the PDF that's popping up there in blue, or you can select always allow pop-ups from this site and then just click done. And when it does download, it might show up at the bottom tab of your browser, or if you're like me, it actually pops up as a new tab. It just depends on your computer settings. So when you open that download, you're going to see a report like this. This is the progress and goals report, and you're going to look for those three values I shared earlier. So that's, again, the gross floor area. It's in that gray box in the upper top left. And then you're going to look for the total GHG emissions in metric tons and the total location-based GHG emissions intensity in the kind of under that progress ending date, 12/31/2022. So right here. Okay, great. So that's the end of it. Then you would just take those and add those to your form, but I'll just show you briefly what this looks like. So here I am at the login page for Energy Star, logging in, and this is the home page. So for me, I can see all of my test properties that I have here. I'm going to click reporting, progress and goals report, and I see progress and goals report is selected. And I'm going to select for my test property 1, single building, small museum, select the phrase single year ending December 31st, 2022, generate and download reports. And there you can see for me, there's that tab that pops open. Oh, it's being a little slow. Well, in any case, it looks just like the slide that I had up previously. So you'll just look for those three different values. Here we are. So there's my gross floor area, 10,000 square feet. And then my total GHG emissions metric tons and my total GHG emissions intensities right here. So that concludes my little portion of the presentation, but I will get it over to Misha here. Here we are. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Danielle. And that's actually a great kind of thing for folks to see, that it might take a little bit for the report to actually download after you click that button. So being patient, I feel like it's hard, we expect everything to be ready just like right immediately, but unexpectedly good demo. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the alternative methodology. If you don't have Energy Star Portfolio Manager and you really don't feel like it's an option for you, again, we want to just really emphasize and encourage the use of Portfolio Manager wherever possible, because it has a lot of benefits for your institution, not just for this little project that we're doing here, which we hope to be a big project that's going to grow. So you can, that's another good reason, is to kind of get in on the ground floor of this. But in any case, if this doesn't feel accessible for you, we did create this Excel tool. There is a link here in the slides, which I imagine will be shared, but it's also going to be provided directly on the reporting form where you're going to record your results. So whether you're using the tool or a Portfolio Manager to get the data, you're going to have to use the same reporting form no matter what. And so this is conveniently linked there for you. It has 2 tabs. We're trying to keep it as simple and easy as possible. There's just a screenshot here of the first tab, which is the instructions. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's basically assuming that you already have, and you will already have to have, all of your energy data for the calendar year of 2022 when you open up this tool, because that's what you're going to input. And then it's just going to calculate those carbon intensity and total carbon values for you. So Danielle, if you want to go to the next slide, I can just say, yeah, this is what the tool looks like. It's, again, we tried to keep it pretty simple. And I also am going to provide a quick demo of what the actual use of this tool will look like. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And I have the tool up here, so you can see We have instructions just to avoid anyone accidentally doing anything wild. The tool is protected, but you should be able to click on all of these links. This cell here is the reporting form that I was referring to that Danielle had mentioned that she's planning on sharing next week, I believe. And so, yeah, I also wanted to just reiterate what Danielle mentioned, especially for folks who are not using Portfolio Manager. So if you have Portfolio Manager, it does all the work for you in terms of coming up with your January 1st to December 31st, 2022 data. It goes ahead and, kind of cuts off the usage at those specific dates. If you are just trying to gather up your utility bills and you have a billing cycle that starts on January 8th to February 8th and so on, then we recognize that it would be challenging for you to try to, think about how you are going to shift that usage to meet that January 1 to December 31st window. So what's really important is that it is a full year of data as close to the calendar year 2022 as you can get. So if you are someone who has a bill period that starts, January 8th, January 14th, that's okay. Just start there and make sure you go through a full year's worth of data. So the other quick note before we jump into the tool itself is I think that the only fuel type that this would apply to is diesel, like if you have a diesel generator. We didn't code that into the tool because it's uncommon. So if you are finding that you need to include that, we have some guidance here about how to convert your consumption, in that case it might be gallons, to the kind of singular metric that we want to use, which is kBTUs, and then input that value. So we're not expecting this to be something that's typical, but I did want to call it out that we have instructions where if you go into this calculator and you say, hey, I don't see this fuel that I use, there is guidance that's actually put out by Energy Star on how to handle that. So then once your tool is complete, you will fill out the form with those same 3 important numbers that Danielle pointed out. So let's go ahead and jump into the tool itself. You can see here, the very first thing that we need is the square footage of the building. That's that gross floor area. We have a little note here. This aligns with the Portfolio Manager values. This is the first number that you are going to have to report in your form. So just make sure you not only need it for this calculation, but you also need it in the form itself. We also need to know the zip code of where your building that you're inputting this data for is located. As Danielle mentioned, the location of where you are in terms of your electric grid can affect the carbon intensity. From there, you will just look through at the different fuels that you use on site, and all of these units columns have a little drop down. So we have all of the kind of common units here. Again, if you are someone who says, like, let's say you have district chilled water and you're getting on your utility bill, it's billed to you in some strange units that aren't a part of this drop down menu. The default that we want is kBTU. And so if you follow that link on the instructions tab, it will tell you how to convert whatever your weird units are to the kBTUs that we need. I also want to just call out that renewables are an important part of your carbon equation, right? We do have a link here for more information about how those are calculated in Portfolio Manager. And, the goal here is really to try to mimic the same calculation that Portfolio Manager is doing, even though you may not have your data in Portfolio Manager. So we have 2 options here. You will need to know if your renewable energy credits are owned or sold. There's a couple different options for that, and this link here provides more information about that. I'm not going to do a deep dive into that because, again, I'm not sure it's applicable to everyone. But if you are someone who has on-site renewables, you will want to consider that and make sure you understand where your renewable energy credits are going. That's also something we're happy to help with if you have questions. Then you're going to select all of your units here, and then these yellow fields here is where you're going to put your total consumption for each one of those fuels. So I'm going to get on with it here. I'm going to give you an actual example. I have a 25,000 square foot building. I don't recall where this fake building is located, so I'll just put it in Washington. And I have my data starting in January 23rd, 2021. So I'll just show you all what I'm looking at here. This is just a cheat sheet with some example data. These are actual real institutions that participated in the Culture Over Carbon project. I'm not going to tell you which ones, but I went ahead and grabbed their consumption and just put it here. So hopefully you're already tracking your data and you have it in this monthly format. If not, you might have to pull it off of your bills directly, but it should look something like this. And so you can see that in this case for this building, I have electricity data that starts January 23rd, 2021. You don't want to use 2021. We are going to use 2022. But again, I'm using the data I had available to me. And then for the gas, they have it starting on January 8th. So that's another thing to note is, you know, again, a real value of Portfolio Manager is that it's going to take care of truing all of this up for you, because even as this is going to be input with the tool, it's not like a perfect representation. It's off by just a few days. In the scheme of things, not a huge deal, but just really trying to plug, again, the utility of Portfolio Manager and how helpful it can be. So in any case, we have our KWH here. And so I want to take the total annual consumption for all of that. So it looks like I have 318,000 kilowatt hours. So I'm going to go over here to my electricity. I'm going to choose kilowatt hours, and I'm going to input the value. So you can see that the calculator has already updated with my total emissions and then my emissions intensity, which is, again, as Danielle mentioned, the kilograms per square foot. But that's not all. I also have natural gas at this property. So I want to make sure that I include that as well. So I'm going to input under gas. I have mine in therms, and it looks like we've got 17,000 therms here. So for this building, this 25,000 square foot building in Washington, we have a total annual emissions of 180 metric tons of CO2 equivalent, and the intensity is 7.2 kilograms per square foot. So these numbers look good. No concerns here. Let's say that this is a tiny building that's only 700 square feet, and these are the numbers that we input. You can see that the emissions intensity here has gotten huge. And so we do have a flag that's like, hey, this doesn't really look like what we would expect. If you go through and you double check your consumption and your square footage and your location and your units and everything is right, and you're still getting this error, then maybe you just have really high consumption and you can go ahead and input that number. No judgments. We're just trying to make sure that the data that we get is really accurate. So that is the quick demo. I do have another example with like chilled water, for example. There's a museum that used chilled water. It was a much larger museum. So, ooh, not quite that big, 370,000 square feet. So in this case, let's see, they have 672,000 million BTUs of chilled water usage. So once again, I'm looking at my data and I'm like, oh no, I chose the wrong units. I got this error and it was actually billed in ton hours. So as soon as I update those units, the numbers start to make more sense. So we've tried to make it as foolproof as possible, but we also understand that sometimes utility bills are difficult to parse out. So hopefully, you know, the key guidance I would just say is make sure you check your units, double check your numbers, and make sure your building square footage is correct. One important note on that, going back to what Danielle said, if you are planning on combining multiple buildings and just submitting, for example, if you have a campus and you just want to submit one campus number for your property, even though you have, you know, 2 or 3 buildings, just make sure that your square footage matches your consumption. So if you have 2 buildings worth of consumption that you've entered here, make sure that you put the square footage of both those buildings in this cell here. So that's my quick demo. I'm going to pass it back to you, Danielle. I don't know if we want to do questions at this point before we jump back into the slides.
Yeah, let's go ahead and just jump into some Q&A, and while people have their questions all fresh in their minds.
And I know that when I joined, I couldn't use my mic or camera. So if
Really?
attendees are not able to, they have questions and are not able to use their mic, you can always use the chat. And if you have no questions, that's also okay. You can always follow up with us later.
Yeah,
I think you
absolutely.
did a beautiful job on the instructions, ladies. Thank you. So probably answered all of the questions. But
Okay, great. Well, we'll just go back to our slides and make a few quick announcements before we wrap up today. And of course, if you do think of some other questions while we're wrapping up, please feel free to pipe up. Great. So I think, Misha, if you just want to give us your lovely project update on the Energy Star score.
Yeah, so some folks may have been following our progress towards trying to establish a Energy Star score for museums. As a quick refresher, an Energy Star score is a 0 to 100 score that compares a building's energy performance to similar buildings nationwide. And Energy Star does a lot of work to try to normalize those numbers. But in order to do that, they need a kind of baseline nationally representative data set. And so for that, we need 12 months of whole building energy data, 12 consecutive months, and a diverse set of physical and operational characteristics. And so that data set does not exist for museums right now. And so Danielle, if you want to go to the next slide, that is really the update of what we're trying to do right now. We have been working together with the EPA to develop a survey for the sector. So those who participated in the Culture Over Carbon project might be familiar with this idea. Unfortunately, we can't use the same survey that we use for Culture Over Carbon because there are some additional pieces of information that EPA needs. However, if you participated, you already have a huge leg up because you already know where all of that information is, and anything that does overlap, you can just pull straight from that form you submitted to us. We are targeting May to June for responses. We want to try to get those in before summertime. And we need a little over 200 responses as our estimate. That's based on the total number of cultural institutions in the United States and then EPA's assessment of what it would take to get that statistically significant sample set. We will be collecting 2022 energy data. So if you're participating in this project, the Carbon Inventory Project, again, you already have a leg up because you can use the same data. So keep an eye out on the reporting form for the Carbon Day for this project. We have a little checkbox that will give you the opportunity to opt in to participate and say, hey, I'm interested in answering this survey and contributing to the sector, working towards this Energy Star score. And then that way we know we can follow up with you after Carbon Day to get you to fill out that survey. So that's the update we have right now. We are currently anxiously awaiting the draft survey from EPA. We spoke with them last week and they're just putting some finishing touches on it. So then we'll get things moving forward.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Misha, for the update and again for your lovely demo and presentation as always. So if you haven't done so already, please sign up to participate in the Carbon Inventory Project. Your participation and commitment to the project encourages others and will help its success. And again, this is how we're going to communicate with you about the Carbon Day form. But if you don't sign up, you can find it on the Carbon Inventory site page when we have that available. You'll just want to make sure that we receive your form by June 1st when we start totaling up all the numbers. So I'm going to drop that in the chat if you'd like to sign up. And to encourage further participation, if you would like to tweet about your participation in the project, you can tag ECP on Twitter. I'm also going to drop our handle in the chat, so please feel free to do that. And then finally, just another announcement about our final session of office hours. That's going to be May 25th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, where we're going to hear from some of the project participants about their experience throughout the project. So thank you again for being here. Thank you for your participation. We're very grateful, and I hope you have a great day.